Hello and welcome to Volleyball State, a look at the sport of volleyball in 6 rotations and a proud part of the I-80 Club. I'm Jeff Sheldon.
And I'm Lincoln O'Neill.
This week on the show, a seismic move in college volleyball via the transfer portal. One of the biggest names in the country has chosen her new team just hours ago. Plus, of course, we got a breakdown of what we saw in Nebraska's spring matches. We can now make some somewhat educated guesses for the fall, but hey, a lot of questions still aren't going to be answered until the team comes back together in August. And we got listener questions. We've got some great questions from our Volleyball State subscribers this week coming via the I-80 Club Patreon and email. We're going to try to answer them. We'll also talk about the Pro Volleyball Federation. The top-seeded Omaha Supernovas are going to head to Las Vegas this week, looking to repeat as PVF champions, but it is a full slate of talent out there in Vegas that the Supernovas are going to have to knock off. But of course, to start things off, we are going to talk with Nebraska volleyball legend, world champion, and fellow podcaster, the great Sarah Pavan, joins us in Rotation 1. But Lincoln, tell the folks what else they can get from the Volleyball State community.
Oh, we got so much. We're putting on content galore. If you want more volleyball coverage, we have a subscribers only stuff where we do things like Discord chats that we pulled a lot of the questions today from. We go live with videos. We do a lot, and we sometimes put out articles that arrive in your inbox as well, too. So all of that you can sign up for patreon.com/I80club. We got a lot of stuff coming up. We put out a lot of content. Otherwise, you can follow us on social media as well. Volleyball Pod is on Twitter, Blue Sky, and we put out little TikTok videos as well. And I also share my thoughts on Lincoln_VB and write all sorts of articles for Huskers Illustrated. I got something coming up on the Supernovas as well for Herdat, Substack. You know, we're putting out videos. We're just volleyball content is what we provide for all of y'all.
Year round, all the time. Yeah, you can get the exclusive stuff at patreon.com/I80club for just $5 a month. Got a lot of great stuff coming up today, but first of all, we're going to dive right in with Nebraska volleyball great, world champion, Sarah Pavan.
All right, now we are joined in Rotation 1 by Sarah Pavan, who is host of VolleyTalk with Sarah Pavan. She hosts a podcast with her husband, Adam Schultz. Sarah is a 2-time Olympian, a world champion on the beach. A lot of you may know her as a 4-time All-American at Nebraska and 2006 national champion. I think most importantly for this podcast, she was also my first overall pick on the John Cook all-time roster. Sarah, we are so glad to have you. Thanks for joining us on Volleyball State.
I'm so happy to be here. And honestly, I'm honored. Number one pick. Thank you.
Well, to be fair, you were the number 1 overall pick either way. Lincoln had the first pick. I let him go first. I also would have picked you number 1.
Oh, okay, thank you. Because I was about to say, well, who did you pick?
Already.
We couldn't pick the same player, so Jeff had to go with Jordan Larson. But I had the choice. I knew the right way to go was opposite, and
I'm honored. I'm flattered. Thank you so much.
Well, we're honored and flattered too. I mean, it's not often we have a fellow podcaster joining our program too. I mean, so we're pretty much the same business. We're both world famous podcasters. So, I mean, what made you want to start a podcast? I mean, you have a lot of options after you get done with your volleyball career. Why podcasting?
So as I was nearing retirement, I was, evaluating some options of what I thought might be interesting. And I've been so deeply involved in the sport for my whole life. So I wasn't necessarily ready to be fully immersed in the sport, like from a coaching perspective or something like that, like right away. But the broadcasting side of thing really appealed to me. I find it very interesting to share my experience and knowledge and how I see the game with people who might not have that same background. But the thing that I noticed when I was reaching out to people is the first question would always be, well, what experience do you have doing this? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, I literally retired yesterday, so none. And so it was a circle that just was not working out. And I was like, okay, I need to prove to people that I actually do know about the sport and can speak to it in a coherent way. So my husband and I kind of came up with the idea of well, let's just talk about volleyball on our own and share knowledge in our way.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of how the idea got started. And we've just continued doing it because we have a lot of fun.
Never let anyone tell you you need experience to start a podcast. And I would give that advice to anyone who's listening to us right now. Like, the barrier to entry is really, really low. And you can start talking about volleyball at a level way below the expertise that someone like Sarah Pavan would have as well. So everyone, go live your life and follow your dreams, no matter what you want to podcast about.
Well, that was the thing. I was like, these people keep telling me that like I don't have enough experience. And I was like, I know I do. I just need a chance. So like I'll create my own experience and see what happens.
For our listeners who maybe haven't been able to listen to your show yet, give us a little bit of a flavor of what it's like. Are you talking about mostly college? You talking about pros? Like, how's it sort of set up?
So in looking at the volleyball podcasting landscape, we realized that the majority of shows do a lot of interviews and things like that with athletes and coaches, and they are a teaching platform sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And we found that a gap in the volleyball podcast like market was kind of like an analysis type of show. Like I love watching like ESPN and like the debriefs after games and seeing how they break them down and thoughts like that. So I was like, there's nobody doing this. I think it would be cool to do it for volleyball. And so we kind of do breakdowns and analysis and like what is going on in the sport from college to professionally, both domestically and overseas. And once VNL starts up, the international side.
Yeah, you cover a wide gamut too. I mean, just on this one, you talk, your European professional leagues. You're talking the men's collegiate game. You're talking about the United States professional game too, and you also talk a lot about the women's college game as well. I mean, how much more volleyball are you watching because of the podcast, or were you already this immersed into the volleyball world in your regular day-to-day life?
I would say we're watching significantly more now. We have always been really into the NCAA women's side of things, and we've been really into VNL. But we weren't like, we would follow NCAA men, we'd follow the leagues just because of like former teammates and things like that. But I would say since we started, we have become much more invested and much more, a lot of our time is spent watching volleyball now.
A lot more passion for Hawaii men's volleyball than you ever imagined. I when you started.
100%. I can't believe how opinionated I've gotten and how passionate I've gotten about men's collegiate volleyball. Somewhat controversial for people, but I love it.
We sort of noticed the same thing when we were kicking around the idea of starting a podcast about volleyball. There's some educational aspects to it. We know there's a lot of fans, particularly of Nebraska, who really like the sport, but maybe don't know that much about it. And we are certainly not at a coaching or a playing level of expertise, but we're able to explain a few things. I think one of the other parts of this space that was kind of missing, and you and your show fill that very nicely, is the ability to like be critical of play and point out some ways where people are falling short. And I think that there's maybe a little bit of a tendency to go lighter on women's volleyball players than there would, say, to football or men's basketball players. But you're able to point out areas that need to be improved. Have you caught any kind of negative feedback about that?
Yeah. Simple answer is yes. It is a pattern that I have seen in volleyball as a sport in general, but particularly on the women's side it's very positive, which is great. We want to highlight what athletes are doing well. We want to promote the teams and the athletes that have like good followings. But I think we need to be honest at the same time. And so it has rubbed some people the wrong way. Getting feedback of like, you're supposed to be growing the sport. Why are you talking like this? And it's like, you need some education. Like, not everything is perfect. And I'm not saying the athletes aren't trying. They're working hard. They're trying. But I think from like a strategy perspective, people need to understand, because volleyball is not well understood from a strategic or tactical perspective by the general population. And so yes, it may be critical, but I think it's a learning experience for the listeners to understand what is actually happening.
Well, and I think one of the parts about growing a sport, and if we agree that that's a goal that maybe all three of us have, part of that comes from accountability and
Exactly.
holding players and coaches to high standards. And okay to say like, hey, team X is not really passing well in this match or not really serving well, because like to say otherwise is just kind of lying to people and
Mhm.
treating them like they're dumb. How are you going to educate people about a sport if you don't say like, do this, don't do this?
Exactly. And like my thing is like I am very authentic. I am myself in every situation, and the podcast is no different. What you see or listen to on the podcast is 100% who I am, and I'm not ashamed of hiding that or trying to make people comfortable necessarily, because sometimes things are uncomfortable and sometimes we have to be honest and athletes don't play well or teams made a bad decision, and I think it's fair to bring it up. And personally, I think like people who are spreading news about volleyball, whether they are critical or not, are growing the sport. And we've gone, even though I have been criticized for, my analysis at times, it's also like we've gotten a lot of positive feedback of like, I've spent so much time watching men's volleyball this year and I never have before. Or like, you've gotten me so into NCAA women's volleyball. I'm like searching for games now. And like that is growing the sport by just like raising awareness.
Yeah, I think it's that honesty that really makes a difference too. I mean, you have entities that are trying to grow the sport too, but you need to make sure they're going about the right way, whether it's professional leagues or, volleyball's existed, but it has a lot more roots in Europe. But when it's trying to get a foothold in the United States too, there's a lot of people who have different visions, and that's okay. We all have different opinions. So I that's what I appreciate, is just the honesty, and even going back to your playing days in Nebraska too, that's one thing that I think is really carried through. And that's why I think podcasting and hopefully maybe eventually future broadcasting has been, is in the cards for you, is people appreciate authenticity, I think. So that's good. Well, I will shift gears a little bit to talk about your playing career too. I mean, last October, you announced that you were going to retire. How did you know it was time for that? And how difficult the decision was that for you to make, saying, playing days are finally done?
I'm somebody who takes a long time to come to decisions, but once I make them, like I don't look back. I think evaluating kind of the landscape, so finishing my career on the beach side and evaluating the landscape of beach volleyball in Canada and the future, it was a grind. And I actually tore my meniscus in January of last year. I had to have surgery, and then like fighting back from that while trying to qualify for the Olympics, it was not ideal. And a lot of life stuff had been happening on the side, pretty serious stuff. And I think my life experience, my life perspective had kind of evolved. And while at my healthiest, I was still very capable of playing at a very high level. There's more to life. And the sport had given me so much in such a long career that I just felt like it was time. And like the injury was it was the first time in my life that my body had kind of betrayed me. And I think it was kind of a wake-up call of like, I've used my body as a tool for so long, and I've done so much and put it through so much. Like, I think it's giving me a sign that like, it's time.
Yeah.
Well, Sarah, most of our listeners who are maybe exclusively or mostly focused on college volleyball are going to know all about your college exploits. You hold basically every indoor Nebraska kill record that there is, season, career, single match. You're like John Wick with a volleyball. But your professional career took you to the beach. Can you tell us a little bit about how that part of your career started? How'd you get involved in beach volleyball?
Well, a lot of people don't know, like I did play professionally indoor for 10 years. I was, overseas in a number of countries. Went back to our Canadian national team after college. But then, after failing to qualify with Canada for the 2012 Olympics for indoor, I was kind of looking at my career. I was like 26 at the time. And I was like, okay, I can keep doing this. I'll be 30 for the next Olympics. Like I can keep going down the same path, or I can try to take matters into my own hands and just pursue a different path. So while indoor has always been my focus and my passion, and I did continue to play professionally indoor while I made the transition, after the 2012 qualification, I started playing for Canada on the beach because a huge goal I had ever since I was a little kid was to go to the Olympics. So beach started as a means to an end, for sure. And I had like 6 years of overlap there where I would take my indoor contract overseas and just do beach in the summer. And then finally made the transition full time to beach in 2018, I think, 2019.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you did qualify for the Olympics twice. You also have a world championship. What are you most proud of that you accomplished during your beach career?
I mean, I think winning a world championship is something special. Mm-hmm. I think, I'll always be proud of that. I'm very proud of the fact of witnessing the evolution of beach volleyball in Canada during my time with the program. It was a program that was struggling and didn't have much traction back in 2013 when I started. And to see how the game has evolved, the interest that has been generated in my country for the sport, I think is incredible. And even though I may have played just a small part in that, like to be a part of that evolution is amazing.
You mentioned that one of your goals was to reach the Olympics too. You did that twice. I think you end up losing in the quarterfinals both. I mean, did that fulfill your dreams and kind of your hopes of being an Olympic athlete?
I think for me, goals are funny in that, like, once I reach one, it's like, okay, cool, now on to the next. Like, it's something that I'm more aware of now, but as a younger athlete, I didn't take enough time to really appreciate the goals that I was accomplishing in the moment. It was always like, okay, amazing, that was great. Like, let's set a better one. And so while younger me would have been incredibly excited to have gone to the Olympics, as soon as they ended, I was like, we were good enough to medal. Like, we didn't medal. Like, okay, the goal needs to be to win. Mm-hmm. And so the goals just evolved so quickly. And I think with hindsight, yes, I did accomplish incredible things in my career. Did I win an Olympic medal? No, but I think when I came to my retirement, I realized that I had nothing left to prove to anybody else, but more importantly, I had nothing left to prove to myself. Mm-hmm. And so I am satisfied at this point. Not in the moment I wasn't, but at this point, I am very satisfied with my career.
And I think that's a super healthy perspective to have because, we hear a lot of athletes say like just that constant cycle of goal setting, achievement or not achievement, setting another goal, like that can really, you can tell yourself a rough story about yourself if you're not able to enjoy the journey. And I'm really thankful to hear that it sounds like at the end of your playing career that you really do have a healthy perspective on everything.
Yeah, a lot of athletes don't spend enough time acknowledging the good things that they did. It's so easy to obsess and fixate on the negatives and like, I didn't do this, like, why did we lose? But I think looking back, my mental health at the time probably would have been a lot better if I had just like sat back and been like, you just did something really incredible.
Absolutely. Well, hey, I know that you mentioned a little while ago that you spent the first decade of your playing career playing indoors, and you had to go overseas to explore those options. We've talked to a number of athletes about our age range that didn't have the professional opportunities in the U.S. that exist today. I mean, we've got
Mhm.
2 full-time pro leagues and another one with athletes unlimited. If that landscape had existed when you were coming out of college, do you think that your career would have followed a different path?
That's an interesting question. Um,
I mean, I know it doesn't scratch the Olympic itch necessarily, but it does keep you maybe in a more familiar part of the world.
you know what? I don't know. I think of my professional career and I have absolutely no regrets. I got to make incredible friendships and relationships, and I got to experience different cultures. And while it is not easy to live overseas 9 months a year, it is very challenging. I don't know if I would have made a different decision. Quite frankly, I think at some point I would have wanted to play domestically, whether it was like at the very beginning of my career or at the end. I think what the pro leagues in Love and the PVF are doing are incredible. Their missions are completely different. The way they operate is different, but I think so many more people are able to extend their careers because of the accessibility of these leagues, which I think is really, really cool, because I think of how many women I played with whose careers ended really early because they just didn't want to be overseas anymore. I was fortunate that my husband would come with me, which made it a lot easier for me from an emotional and life perspective. But a lot of people don't have that. So I think it's really extending the careers of a lot of North American athletes, which is cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you should mention. I mean, you played all over the world. You played in China, Italy, Brazil, South Korea. I mean, it is a globe. And does that take a toll on you physically to go to different, or did you enjoy going to different parts of the world and getting immersed in the local culture there?
I loved completely being immersed in the cultures. I feel like you don't truly understand like what a country is about until you live there. And so I really appreciated that. Every country was a little different on how they approached training or recovery or lack thereof. So those were interesting things to navigate. Um, yeah, we'll leave it at that.
So, I mean, Jeff mentioned the different. There's 2 currently professional leagues. There could be a 3rd professional league with Athletes Unlimited in there as well too. If you were named commissioner of all professional volleyball in North America, what would that look like? What would you change, and how would you set it up?
Oh dear! Wow.
We've just given you an incredible amount of power. Use it
Yes.
responsibly.
Honestly, okay, when I look at, we've had discussions with it because people submit a ton of questions on our podcast, so we've had to think about things like this. In an ideal world, okay, I would probably structure the North, because there's so many leagues in this country. I would probably structure the North American leagues like they do the European ones,
Mhm.
where it's like you have your A level, B level, C level, and basically the way overseas works is if you come last in your division, you get demoted.
Yeah,
Mhm.
And
promotion,
then if you,
relegation. I'm all about it.
yeah,
Let's go.
I love that. The styles and the formats of the leagues would obviously have to be similar. Like the way that they operate now is just so different that it would be tricky. But I think having the promotion and relegation would just really keep it interesting. And then you would see so much more excitement and like investment for every single match. So, I mean, you've kind of seen the leagues differentiate themselves as far as level goes, like already. So
Mhm.
if that were to remain the case, it would be really cool if like the winner of the PVF like moves up to Love, and
Mhm.
then the like last place team in Love goes down, and then it would just be like so entertaining, I think.
Yeah.
Because really what you have there is you have one league. It's just multiple tiers, and these teams could play each other. I love the idea.
Yeah, I'm surprised you didn't
I
put
would love
expansion
that.
team in Canada. It was one of your first options to do.
Pardon?
You didn't put an expansion team in Canada. I'd do that too while we're at it.
Exactly. I think like Vancouver and Toronto and like, yeah, it would be great.
I will cheer for whoever's representing Saskatchewan. So I'll just transport my CFL
Don't
fandom.
don't sleep on Saskatchewan. They're actually like pretty good.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to be talking a little bit later on in the show, Sarah, about the Pro Volleyball Federation Championship finals that are going to be this weekend. I know you follow that league for your show. Just give us your take on the PVF playoffs this weekend. Who do you like, and who are going to be kind of the key players that impact who walks home with the trophy?
Okay, we did a little preview on our most recent episode, and I don't want to this might not be a popular opinion on your podcast, but both Adam and I, I'm sorry to say, we picked Indy to beat Omaha in the first semi.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, you said that Brooke Nunnerville is going to be the key, and I think that,
Yes.
I mean, you gave a lot of edges to Indy with Teeler and Sydney Hilly, who I know you're a big fan of her. So you made a rational case, I thought.
We basically broke down position by position and was thinking like, okay, if both of these athletes from each team are playing to their potential, like who do we feel is more consistent, can bring more? And so for Omaha, like Brooke Nunnerville was like the X factor. She has kind of, even if other athletes on the team have been up and down, she has been pretty consistent all season. And so we were like, will Indy be able to break down the Omaha's serve receive to be able to just like camp out on Nunnerville? If that's the case, very good chance to win. Will they run their middle? I don't know. They don't really run their middle. So that might be an issue. But I think from what we've seen in the trajectory of their series, we picked Indy. And then we picked Atlanta to win. Oh, actually, I picked Atlanta. Adam picked Orlando, I think, to win the second semi. So we don't know.
Well, this is a great story with Omaha and Indy, because you got Indy, the first year expansion team, and set by Sydney Hilly, who played for Omaha last year. And then you mentioned the trajectory of the series. I think Omaha won the first couple matches against Indy this year, and then Indy swept them in Omaha the last time they played. So I think that's going to be a really even matchup.
Yeah.
Well, and not to mention they're playing at a neutral site. Like in Nebraska for volleyball, if a Nebraska team is playing at home, they automatically get a huge advantage just because of the following, the passion of the fans. Playing in a neutral site, I think that definitely edges in Indy's favor.
Especially when it's in Vegas and you have 3 East Coast teams and 1 Central Time Zone team. That it could be crickets. I don't know. We'll see if they get dozens of fans, but see if they can recruit anybody off the strip. Hey, you lost all your money. Here's some tickets to go watch volleyball.
I really hope that there's a good turnout. I'm hoping. I think it's worth it. I'll be sad if fans don't show up, but I'm hopeful.
Yeah, for sure. For last topic, we kind of want to talk to you about too. John Cook retired this year too. I mean, he was your college coach too. Were you surprised by the timing of the retirement too? And were you caught off guard when that news broke?
Okay. Yes, I was surprised at the timing, but let me tell you, I was watching Love Omaha. I was watching one of the Omaha pro teams playing.
Yes, it was Love.
Okay. And Danny was in the crowd. And I was like, there's a reason she's here.
Yep.
And I had thought for years, like when Coach Cook retires, he will give the program to Danny. Like I was like 100%. So when I saw her there in like a random January match, I was like, something is up. But I didn't expect the announcement to come so soon. I figured that he would want to win one more, but then in thinking about it more, I was like, I think he really thought, and everybody thought, that he would win one with Lexi Rodriguez. And then when that didn't happen, it was like, okay, kind of time to move on. But Rachel Holloway actually was the one who messaged me because she saw the news before I did, and she messaged me. She's like, "Look at this," and we were both just like shocked.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think it was like was it a Tuesday? It was some like weird day of the week.
Wednesday at like 5:00 because we recorded our podcast.
Oh,
and
that's right.
Murmur started to leak out, and then the news came out like an hour.
We
and a
were
half.
recording a show, and I think Lincoln got a text from a source at like the very end of our recording, and so like the entire hour and a half we had just recorded was basically obsolete. We're like, well,
you were like,
crap.
Scratch that. Let's start again.
Yeah, well, we did. We actually ended up going live that night with our pals on the I-80 Club and talking about it. But you know, you had mentioned Danny earlier that she seemed kind of like the longtime natural choice. What do you remember about her? What do you know about her that you know makes you think that obviously this is the person to take over the program?
Well, a lot of reasons. A, just to see how she built Louisville into what it is. At such a young age, like she has clearly proven herself to be capable of A, growing, and B, maintaining a perennial powerhouse program. Secondly, just she's no bullshit. I think, which is perfectly suited for a program of Nebraska's kind of stature and prowess. Like Nebraska expects to win. And I think that can be intimidating for a lot of people, but she experienced it as a player, which the expectation was always to win. And to walk into that, she's already familiar. And so I don't think that expectation intimidates her. She, like, being from Nebraska, just the connection with the community and the university and volleyball fans, it's just like, aside from the on-court stuff, which she has proven herself more than capable of, just who she is as a person and her leadership and her communication style is just like winner.
Mm-hmm.
You played with her. Did you sense that when, as a player, that she kind of had the right approach to make a successful coach? Is that something she developed and kind of grew into?
I think the thing that kind of turned it for me, like my freshman year, I was just like, eyes wide open, like, let's survive. I
the Daily Nebraskan that year. I remember that. Good times.
Oh my gosh. But I think the thing that like really highlighted her character for me was when she was told she would be the libero of the team. Like, she had started as a setter for 3 years, and then all of a sudden it was just like, thank you so much, but you're going to be the libero now. And like, to see her response, it was both very human, but very mature. And to see how she was able to put her ego aside for the good of the team, and how much of a factor she was able to be in that season in a new position. She gained so much respect from me in how she handled that.
Excellent. And I'm sorry, we're kind of bouncing back and forth. We did want to ask you, when John announced his retirement, he'd been there 25 years, and you played under him kind of still in the early part of his Nebraska tenure. What was your experience like under John? What made him what made him such a great coach?
The thing that I appreciated most was how far ahead of his time he was. Like, back when I played, sports psychology was just like getting started, like you didn't really do it. And then but he was very big on that. And none of us had really experienced it before because it wasn't nearly as mainstream as it is now. But he was able to identify that was really important. And then as far as like even what we would do in our warm-ups and body preparation, you didn't see people doing that back then. So he was very ahead of his time as far as like body maintenance, recovery, sports psychology, but also just like would put a book in my locker or would be like, this made me think of you. And just to be able to reflect on kind of those things and the concepts that he was trying to get across to me as a very young adult. I think he was definitely ahead. Things that are like taken for granted now and are considered normal, like he was way ahead of the curve.
Yeah, for sure. We're wrapping up here with Sarah Pavan. Go to her YouTube channel. She's got lots of great videos on instruction on how to play volleyball, training, things like that too. You can listen to her podcast there too. However, I wanted to close by asking this question too. Also, a lot of anime videos too.
Oh,
what do you enjoy talking about more, volleyball or anime? And then what's your favorite anime series to talk about?
Okay, I need to preface this by saying I started my YouTube channel during COVID to try to keep kids engaged in the sport because I knew how sad they would be to not be practicing. And so as I'm making these videos, these people kept commenting like, you need to watch Haikyuu. And I ignored them forever. But finally I was like, can somebody just tell me what this is? And so they're like, it's a volleyball anime. And in my head, I'm like, okay, sounds real dumb, but sure, I'll check it out. Let me tell you, these people did not steer me wrong. Okay. This, if you don't know anime, it's like Japanese animation. It sounds very young.
I'm watching so much Pokemon with my kids right now. It's all they want to watch.
Oh my gosh, the way that these writers are able to absolutely nail what it is to be an athlete, what it is to be a teammate, what it is to like maybe not be a great athlete, but still become great at your sport anyway. Like, highly recommend. Highly recommend. It's for all ages. So that's how that gets started. But I do prefer, the communities are completely different. I love the anime community and the way that I've been able to connect with them. I love sharing my experience in the sport with people who are equally enthusiastic about watching it. So yeah, they're completely, it's apples and oranges.
Remind us of the name of the show again.
Haikyuu.
It's called Haikyuu, a volleyball anime series.
That's our summer binge. We'll watch that and we'll check
You guys, you have to, and then you have to tell me what you think about it. I know you're looking at me sideways like you're insane.
Not at all.
You will, everybody I know that has watched it was like, I watched it and then I had to make my kids watch it and then I had to make my volleyball team watch it. So yeah.
Where's it? How do you watch it? What is it on a streaming platform or is it on the internet?
I think they had it on Netflix most recently.
Okay.
But they do put them on streaming platforms, yeah.
Yeah, just search for it on your home screen. Haikyuu, the volleyball anime. Sarah Pavan, thank you so much for being with us today. Be sure to check out the show, VolleyTalk with Sarah Pavan. She hosts with her husband, Adam Schultz. You can find that wherever you find your podcast. So get done listening to Volleyball State. Start checking out VolleyTalk if you haven't already. Sarah, thank you so much.
Thanks so much, guys. This was fun.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks again to Sarah Pavan. Again, go download her podcast, VolleyTalk, not the message board. A lot of weird stuff happening there too, but VolleyTalk with Sarah Pavan is where you want to listen to her. She did a great recap on the kind of a preview of all of the PVF and international volleyball. I enjoy listening to it too. And you know what I enjoy the most? And I think we caught it a couple times during our interview with her is when she drops in a boat.
Yeah,
the Canadian accent is just so delightful to listen.
A lot of firsts in that interview. First Canadian guest we've had on the show. First time we've ever talked about anime. First time we've ever interviewed someone who's had at least 30 kills in a match, I'm pretty sure. First time we've had a guest swear on the show. It's Sarah's delightful. Like, I know maybe she like she said, she is her authentic self all the time, unapologetically, and I'm sorry it took so long for us to get her on this show.
Yeah, I kind of want to talk to her in advance of the PVF, and we had lots to talk about. So, great guest too. So let's move on with our show. We're going to move to rotation 2, talk about the Nebraska spring matches. We're kind of going to talk at a high level here. We're going to do big pictures, takeaways at this point. We did record 2 volleyball late. That's what we're calling our after show, where we talked both after the Kansas match, which I think that was available to everyone, then subscribers only after the South Dakota State match in Ord. We're going to do a lot more of that this fall. Probably we won't do it on Sunday matches because that's when we will record our full pod. But if any of those weekend matches prior to that,
maybe Friday, we'll jump in and give our thoughts.
So yeah, so feel free to sign up for patreon.com/A80 Club. You'll get some access to that too. But yeah, I had a fun time doing that. But Jeff, let's talk big level or high level picture. Looking at both of the matches, what players stood out to you as revelations or good, bad? Who stood out to you?
Well, and I'm going to focus on the newcomers because I think, Harper Marie and Andy Jackson are always going to stand out because they're so good, especially Andy Jackson, who I think was maybe if you had to name an MVP of the spring, it would probably be her. What the player I want to talk about first is Campbell Flynn. And I don't know what role she's going to have exactly this fall. Maybe they don't even know that themselves on the coaching staff yet. But the fact that she, made it a real conversation about having a player compete with Bergen Riley as the starting setter spot, I think is a huge win for her. Even if, she's a reserve role or that's how she starts the season. She was incredibly impressive, not just her physicality where she could attack on two, like we talked about on the volleyball late shows and in the I-80 Club Discord. That big left-handed swing is such an asset that I don't remember Nebraska ever having at the setter position before. But her tempo and her location and her decision-making, especially with some of these new routes that we're seeing Danny Busboom Kelly implement in the Nebraska offense, like I think, Nebraska can't go wrong this fall if they're using Bergen Riley or Campbell Flynn more often. I think it's only going to benefit the team to have some really good competition at that spot. And we should say, Campbell Flynn played all 4 sets last weekend against South Dakota State because Bergen Riley was being held out, kind of nursing a wrist injury that doesn't seem that serious.
Sore wrist was what DBK said as she classified. I wouldn't call it injury, just sore.
That's what you get when you go do roping practice with John Cook. She probably tweaked something doing that. But Nebraska is going to have a really good option at setter for the foreseeable future, it seems like. And I'm excited to see what Bergen Riley is going to look like in the fall. I think she's going to be able to take a step forward and run a little bit of a faster offense. But Campbell Flynn kind of put herself in the conversation, and I would have been really surprised at hearing myself say that before we saw those 2 spring matches.
Yeah, and I think Campbell Flynn, and also the player that I want to talk about too, Ryan Hunter, what it did is it raises the floor of play. I mean, whether or not she plays or not too, but worst case scenario, Bergen Riley does suffer an injury or something happens to her, Nebraska's floor is a lot higher at that position than it would be otherwise too. And that's why I think Ryan Hunter, especially in that Kansas match too, she really showed that one, she's fully healthy, which I think is big because this was her first public match since she tore her ACL last February, March. So she went more than a year without playing in a public competition, and really they had this close scrimmage against Omaha. So that was one big thing. And 2, she proved that she's ready. I mean, she can compete at the collegiate level too. She has the physicality, she has the strength and the shot making to make a difference at that. I know everyone wanted to anoint her as a starting opposite after that first match. You saw a little bit of struggles, which is good to see that. And against South Dakota State, she only had 3 kills, 2 air wings. So you hope. I mean, a freshman is going to have those ups and downs. So it's not you're worried to panic, but again, it raises the floor because it officially announced that Ali Czech has signed with the program. She'll be joining. She'll have competition at that outside spot or opposite spot.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about transfer portal in a little bit here in rotation 3. Let's go back to Ryan Hunter for a second. It seems like any of the injury concern or post-injury concern, her coming off that knee injury, pretty much went away for me. This is an explosive, athletic young woman. I think what was most impressive to me, and I think we talked about this on Volleyball late after the South Dakota State match, is the range that Hunter has. Like, she doesn't just crush balls cross court like you see young players do a lot of the times. She can hit line, and she hit line from both sides of the court, including this out of system play that I think we posted a video of on the Blue Sky and Twitter accounts for Volleyball Pod. But when you can do that and you can keep the opposing defense off balance by mixing up your shots, that's a really high level of sophistication especially for a young player. So I was really impressed to see, Ryan Hunter there. She was the only, I say, true opposite that got to play for Nebraska this spring. Ali Czech joins the team now officially this summer. And so Nebraska is definitely going to have some options.
Yeah, and they used Skylar Pierce at that position as well, too, during the spring. She kind of trained there last year and saw a little bit. And it was good to see her have that bounce back match against South Dakota State after she struggled a bit against Kansas. So, I mean, we could talk on and on. I don't think there's a player. I mean, we could talk about Taraya Sigler, Carrie Linebacker. I thought was also. I mean, I don't think of all the newcomers, they made a stake that they are going to be competitive from day one too. So I'm going to transition to what areas do you feel most comfortable in after the spring matches?
I think the middles probably. We've spent a lot of time talking about newcomers, but the veterans on this team are going to be Rebecca Alec and Andy Jackson. And Nebraska's blocking and their middle attack is actually taking a step up this spring, it looks like. So I'm probably most confident in the middles. And that's even before, we mentioned there are two middles that are going to be joining the team this summer, two in freshman Kenna Kogel and Manaya Obeje are going to be joining the team. And they're both really decorated, high ceiling athletic players. But when you look at Alec and Jackson, I mean, that's rock solid for Nebraska in every rotation.
Yeah. Andy Jackson was a first team All-American last year, and Rebecca Alec looks like an All-American as well too. For me, I think what I'm most comfortable in is Harper Murray. I think, she played well last year too, but her serve, if she's going to add a top spin jump serve, I think that's going to make her more lethal. She already led Nebraska in aces last year too, and just add another dimension to that game. But it was just the confidence and power that she was swinging away with. I mean, she got blocked a couple times too, but I think if there's any lesson that we can take from volleyball the last couple of years is you need to swing away. You can live with a couple blocks, but more often than not, good things will happen if you're swinging hard and not tipping the ball over. So I think I've really seen good progress from her. And then also we talked to her after the South Dakota State match too. I mean, whether or not she's an official captain on this team, she will be a leader. And I think given the journey that she's been over the past year, that may surprise some people, but I'm really impressed with what we've seen from Harper. Her maturity, her self-confidence is high. So I really think that Harper Murray is going to be a leader of this team, whether or not she's a captain.
Yeah, we kind of joked about the no-tip philosophy with Danny Busboom Kelly after we talked with her. But I would say Murray's off-speed shots are probably the only one on the team right now that I really feel is effective. She's the one that when she takes something off or tips, like there is a chance of it falling. And I don't know that I see that necessarily from like Taylor Landfair or even Rebecca Alec when she goes off speed. So I think Murray's still like your most versatile player. I'm really looking to see a jump from her this year. Like it would be great if she'd hit 250 to 275 and get you 3.5 kills a set. That's for team all Big Ten level stuff.
Yeah. I think that you see that too. So, I think I don't know if there's anywhere where I don't feel comfortable or there's still question marks as well too. But but I think between the middles and Harper Murray, I think Nebraska is feeling in good position.
Let's talk surprises. Was there anything that you saw that you didn't expect or maybe had been a question mark going into the spring that you feel like got resolved?
Well, I guess maybe this is another surprise, but I was impressed with the defense of Maisie Bosinger, and she got a chance to play libero a couple of the last two sets against South Dakota State. She was wearing Olivia Mauch's jersey, so it made me kind of confused. Who is this new number 10? But I was really impressed with her, and I think people take her for granted, and she'll just come in, be a serving specialist when Nebraska needs it. But her back row play, I think, is very solid too. And she was a high school setter too, and we've talked about how Nebraska has some of the best out of system setting from its littles. And I think she's a big factor in that too. And that could get her more playing time. So, I mean, I thought Macy Boesinger, people maybe had a little niche role for her, but she made a case that she deserves a little bit more playing time based on what we saw.
For me, I don't know if this was really a surprise because it was sort of hinted at going into the spring, but it was something I didn't know until we saw it, which was Nebraska mixing some things up offensively and running some different patterns and really seeing the first examples of what this tempo could look like was a little bit of a surprise to me. And for those of you who are like, what do you mean tempo in volleyball? It's a little bit different than like an up-tempo offense in football and basketball. We're talking about the time from when the ball leaves the setter's hands to when an attacker contacts it. So it's usually a little bit of a flatter trajectory. The ball gets pushed out a little bit faster. We did see that from both Riley and Campbell Flynn this spring. I'm really, and maybe we're going to talk about remaining questions in a minute. One of mine is how I wanted to see more of Bergen Riley. We did not get to see her very much in this match. She played 2 out of the 8 sets. She played half the time against Kansas and didn't play at all against South Dakota State for that injury. I want to see what Bergen looks like in the fall. And then it was so cool. We posted some video cut-ups from the last couple matches with like whether it's running an outside hitter inside to attack on a slower tempo 2 ball or Andy Jackson hitting out of the back row, I think was something that we all like gasped at. I don't know if she's going to be doing that in the fall. I don't know if they're going to let her serve, but just some new things that opponents have to prepare for and are just kind of fun. The front slide with Andy Jackson, I had to fan myself after I saw that because she could hit 800 off that play this fall. But just some new look Nebraska offense was a little bit of my surprise.
Yeah, I don't think there's a lot. I mean, the lesson I think I took from this is that Danny Busby-Kelly will try anything and is not afraid to just see if it works. If it does, great. We'll run it again. If it doesn't, no big deal. Nothing hurts. So, so you hit it a little bit too. To me, the big remaining questions, there's 2 positions that really 3 positions that I think we won't know until they roll out the ball for that Pittsburgh match too. And they may change. One, I think Harper Murray's going to be starting outside hitter. Is who's going to be that second outside hitter position. I guess let me name all 3, then we'll kind of talk about each one.
Go ahead.
The second one is opposite. We've talked a lot about Ryan Hunter. Now Ali Czech will be there. And third is who's going to be the starting libero. So we gained information this spring, but I don't think we're any closer to an answer on any 3 of those 2. So
yeah, the big one of those that stick out to me, mostly because I think Nebraska is going to be fine at libero, whether they go with Lainey Choboy or Olivia Mauk, and both of them are going to play a lot, regardless of whichever one's wearing the libero jersey. That second outside hitter position, I think, could go a little while before it's resolved. And just from what Danny Busby-Kelly has said and judging from her history at Louisville, is she'll rotate players. Like, even if you're not in the starting lineup in September, like you're gonna play. And so I want to see how quickly Terea Sigler can get acclimated to college volleyball. You already saw her passing is well ahead of where I would expect a freshman outside hitters to be. They set her out of the back row. She can attack out of the back row, which not every freshman comes to college ready to do. And so does she show them enough to firmly grab hold of that second outside hitter spot, or do we see a revitalized Taylor Landfair and she is able to finally grab that job full time like she did late in the second half of last season? So yeah, that's probably my big outstanding question just from a positional aspect.
Well, that's not even Skylar Pierce is in that mix too. I think we saw some good things out of her too, and I think she's willing to do that. And I think one thing we talk about that, watching a lot of Omaha Supernovas, Bird Kuhn goes to the bench a lot too. And what she'll do is in the middle of the match, if a player's struggling, especially at outside hitter with Reagan Cooper and Allie Batenhorst, one of them is struggling, she'll switch, go with the other one too. And she'll kind of ride them out. I mean, you've seen a lot where a player will finish a match and then start the next one too until they get off their hot streak and or they figure it out, and then they'll switch it up too. We'll see if that's the approach that DBK does. But thinking through that positional thing, that's what it kind of, I could see Nebraska doing that, or just right in the hot hand, whoever's playing well that week in practice.
The other question that came up for me as I was watching these spring matches is, what is Nebraska's serving going to look like? There were times last year where I thought Nebraska really kind of took their foot off the gas from a serving perspective, and didn't serve all that aggressively. And that comes with risk, right? Like at the far end of the spectrum, you've got Stanford committing 4 service errors a set because Kevin Hambly wants to really bomb serves and put the other team out of system. And Nebraska was a little bit more in the middle. I think Nebraska isn't quite so, talented over and above everyone else in the Big Ten that they can just be super conservative from the service line. I think they need to put teams out of system, and that's going to help out their block, which means they've got to serve aggressively. We saw that with, you said Harper Murray showing us off a jump serve. I think they're still going to kind of adhere to John Cook's old philosophy of the best 6 servers are going to play. And so maybe that determines who earns some of those DS roles. But like everyone on that team has got to be able to serve tough, because in the Big Ten and with Nebraska's non-conference, the offenses are too good to just get in a side-out battle with other teams. You got to be able to steal some points on your serve.
Yeah, and I think the other half of that too is Nebraska's defense is not going to be elite as it was last year too. Where I think they can get away with not being aggressive, knowing that they just need to get the ball in, and they would have a good chance of either touching an attack with the block or having Lexi Rodriguez get the ball up in the back row. I think Nebraska's defense will still be good and probably elite, but it won't be at the same level. When you lose a generational player like Lexi Rodriguez, there will be some regression to the mean a little bit. So we'll see what that does.
Yeah, that's a really good point. My final question, and really this is just to segue us into rotation 3 about the transfer portal, is, as far as we know right now, is Nebraska's roster finished? Is the roster that Nebraska has right now going to be what we see when the team reconvenes in August? I'm not so sure. Let's move into rotation 3 and talk about the transfer portal, whether Husker additions or Husker subtractions. We got this we got this question in the I-80 Club Discord from Husker VB fan. What portal transfers to other schools will have the biggest impact for their teams this year? Or who are you most looking forward to seeing? For Husker VB fan, his pick is Eva Hudson at Kentucky. And I should say that this question came in on Monday night before the Wednesday morning news that Kennedy Martin has picked her new destination. The Florida All-American is going to be going to Penn State, giving them the biggest prize of the May transfer portal. Lincoln, it feels like that's kind of like the default answer now for all of those which transfer is going to make their biggest impact questions. Like maybe we can answer that acknowledging that Martin is probably the number 1 pick here.
Oh, big deal. I mean, she's one of the best players. I mean, her and maybe Tori Stafford are 2 of the biggest transfer portal entries in the short history of it too. But she instantly raises Penn State into a national title contender. I think it's a mild upset. I think a lot of people, I had to do the odds. I put Wisconsin down as a favorite, but
yeah, I think we both did.
Penn State was in the conversation too. They were one of the 2 or 3 possible destinations I felt like for Kennedy Martin too, but she will bring a lot of firepower to them. The one person, if you feel bad for her, but they'll figure it out, is Caroline Juravicius, who came to Nebraska. Nebraska brings in a Florida opposite in Merritt Beeson, who gets the starting role. Juravicius redshirts, ends up at Penn State. Hey, she wins a national title, plays great against Nebraska.
Played really well.
Yeah. And then Penn State adds a Florida opposite by the name of Kennedy Martin to play her position. So they'll figure it out.
Yeah. Martin, did she average 5 kills a set last year? It was north of 4 for sure. But this is someone Martin's 6'6" or 6'5". Can just dominate a match in the way that few players can. So yeah, I think you and I both had her pegged for Wisconsin, and Wisconsin's in their feelings a little bit about it, or their fans are. But credit to Katie Schumacher-Cauley. She lost a couple of players, big time players, off their national title team last year. You get to rebuild around Kennedy Martin, and then one of the best setters in the country, Izzy Stark's going to be a sophomore this year. Penn State has great back row players. Their libero's really good.
Grimes, yeah.
They will figure out what to do with Caroline Juravicius. She will play a role in that team, I would imagine, if she sticks around. And like they're going to be ready to rock and roll again in State College this fall.
Yeah. Kenny Martin, 5.57 kills per
Oh my
set. She
gosh.
averaged 6.28 points per set too. So yeah.
Those are like Pavan numbers, and
Yeah.
Pavan played when you played to 30 points in rally scoring. So Kennedy Martin is probably going to get fewer sets, I would imagine, just because they rode her in Gainesville last couple years, and she missed some time with injury too, I believe. But yeah, that's the big transfer portal edition news of the day as we record this on a Wednesday morning. Kennedy Martin going to Penn State.
Yeah. Well, before
go ahead.
we move on about Penn State too, I mean, the other big transfer, I think significant transfer, is they got Emmy Selman who came from Ohio State. She was very good as a freshman, 2.81 kills per set. Hitting percentage wasn't where you want to. I think a lot of that is that freshman inconsistency too. But again, maybe she impressed her new teammates. She had 27 kills against a 5-setter.
I was chuckling about that when I was doing show notes because like Selman's numbers were fine. They're kind of what you would expect from a starting outside hitter in the Big Ten, regardless of whether she was a freshman or not. But her standout match was that 27 kill performance against Penn State. So maybe Penn State was always going to be the team that pursued her hard, and now they've got 2 transfer pin hitters to build around this fall in Penn State.
Yeah, it was kind of funny with both Selman and then it was who was the one that went to Ohio State. I'm looking for it right now. Grace Egan. Grace Egan was the other one who had her one huge match of the year last year was against Wisconsin, and that's where she ended up transferring as well.
Yeah.
Too,
so Wisconsin got the other player. I was really anxious to see is of course Mimi Collier, who is the outside hitter from Oregon who transferred to Wisconsin and looks like she's gonna be the focal point of the Badgers offense this fall. Wisconsin, now that they didn't get Kennedy Martin, Kelly Sheffield has been very open about saying, after the Miami transfer, Grace Lopez unfortunately tore her knee up in the spring. She's going to be out for the year. Wisconsin needs an opposite. They need a right side somewhere. And there's a week left in the transfer portal being open. So I don't know kind of what options they're looking at. Are they looking outside of the current U.S. college landscape for that? Wisconsin's had success bringing in foreign players from outside the U.S. before. So maybe they're looking there too. Wisconsin still got a need to fill.
Well, there were some people in my replies after I posted the Kenny Martin saying that they'll be fine. Madison Quest, I think, comes in. She has a very highly touted prospect coming in for the Badgers that she could play opposite to. I think worst case, she's not a worst case scenario, so they will be okay. But there are a few other options out there. I don't know if there's any. No one's on the level of Kenny Martin, but
right,
a Big Ten caliber opposite. I'm trying. There aren't many options in the portal. I think there's a lot fewer entries into this than impact entries than people expected.
Wisconsin's been able to make it work though in the past without necessarily a stud opposite. Anna Smrek, I feel like was a hybrid kind of middle opposite. Kelly Sheffield's moved players around kind of between middle and opposite. Like they've had really good teams without. I'm sorry, what'd you say?
Devin Robinson, kind of same thing as Smrek.
Yeah, Devin Robinson, absolutely. So Wisconsin's going to be just fine. They're going to have it figured out by the fall whether they add another player or not. Other teams that have added some high-level transfers so far, SMU, of course, transfer you as they have been the last couple of years. They brought in a couple players from USC, Jaden Livings and Favor Ayanwu. And then one of the other players that I talked about in the I-80 Club Discord chat on Monday night was they're going to have a new setter, and they're getting her from the in-state rival Texas. Avery Carlson is on her 3rd team in college now, each of those 3 schools being located in the Lone Star State after she started her career at Baylor.
Yeah. And then also, I think one person that excites me, they also added Colorado State, I think she was Mountain West Player of the Year, Malaya Jones as well, too. So they were very transfer heavy last year, and they reloaded. So between Penn State and SMU are really making good use of the transfer portal.
Jones is a really good player. I'm glad you brought her up, and I'm sorry I forgot to mention her. A player like Jones is someone who, if she had gone in the transfer portal now instead of in December, lots of big schools would have been after her. I'm sure she would have gotten a call from Wisconsin.
Yeah, she went in and was out within a week. She was one of the first commitments too. I mean, yeah, she flew under the radar, I think, before while a lot of teams were still playing in the tournament that could have used that. So another one that I think is going to be interesting too, is Caitlin Alexander. She led the NCAA in kills last year too at Hawaii. So she is now at Mizzou. So I'm excited to see what she can do in the SEC. And Mizzou is kind of they're a second tier SEC school. They're kind of a step below the Texas, the Kentuckys, and Florida, I guess I can put in there. But they're
probably the fourth best team in the SEC. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Caitlin Alexander, that was a real surprise to me. It wasn't a surprise that she left Hawaii because she was really, really good. And I was actually expecting her to leave Hawaii, but where she ended up with Dawn Sullivan at Missouri was the big surprise. So congratulations to the folks in Columbia for grabbing one of the best players out of the transfer portal. And I think, she's going to put up big time numbers at Missouri this year.
Yeah. Some other names too. I think just to speed round through, Chloe Chicoine going to Louisville will be fun. And you talked about, I think this was also the Husker VB fans, but I don't know if you want to talk about Eva Hudson at Kentucky. I think pairing her with Brooklyn DeLay was going to be a dynamic 1-2 punch.
Yeah.
Wildcats.
I mean, this was kind of the big shockwave in college volleyball right after the season got done when both Eva Hudson and Chloe Chicoine left Purdue. And, last year on the show, I think I referred to them, in my opinion, as the best 1-2 outside hitter duo in the Big Ten. And now they're both gone. And Chicoine's at Louisville, is that right? And Hudson is going to go put up, big numbers at Kentucky. You pair her with Brooklyn DeLay, who was she the multi-time SEC player of the year? Like, she's really, really good.
SEC player of the year and freshman of
the year. Yeah. Kentucky's got to figure out their setter position, I think, because Emma Grome's finally gone. But, Craig Skinner's got two really good players on the pins, and you can do worse than just starting your team around Eva Hudson and Brooklyn DeLay.
Yeah. The transfer portal is open for another week here. It closes on May 15th. There's a couple other names to watch that maybe make some impacts. Lola Schumacher, who played libero at times. Wisconsin actually lost all three of their littles from last year too. There was one of the weaker areas, but I think that Kelly Sheffield reloaded there. She's still in the portal. I wouldn't be surprised to her to stay maybe in the Big Ten, maybe go out west. We'll see where that news. And the other one I thought that impact is middle blocker Mariana Singletary, who is leaving Texas. Haven't got a read on maybe where she may land, but she's kind of one of those other potential impact players that are in the portal.
That's right. We haven't talked about Nebraska very much here yet. We don't know anything about whether Nebraska has a player who's going to leave. There's, like we said, a week left in the transfer portal. Sometimes these things come out of the blue and surprise you. I don't know if anyone on Nebraska's current roster is going to, take a look at their spot after the spring and say, maybe I would be better off getting guaranteed playing time somewhere else. So, watch some news happen or something like as soon as we get done recording, which often happens. I also, Lincoln, you've sort of heard the same chatter I have that Nebraska might not be done adding to their roster just quite yet. There's a possibility that there's some smoke out there that Nebraska could be looking to the international market to bring in a player. They haven't done that in a while. The last international players that Nebraska brought in, I think, were in like 2018, and there was a setter and a back row specialist, neither of whom earned starting positions, were kind of more reserve players. But if Nebraska still feels like they need some help, maybe on one of the pins, that they could be looking overseas to bring someone in. And of course, we will talk about that if it ends up happening right here on Volleyball State.
For sure. We may have to do a special volleyball late breaking news for that.
Yeah.
But yeah. So let's move on to rotation 4. We did a chat on Monday night Discord. We chatted for about an hour, got some great questions, talked about all sorts of things too, but we picked out a couple of our favorites that I thought led to some thought-provoking discussion too, and we'll kind of throw them up here too. So first one, we'll start with John SP.
That's how I'd say it, yeah.
SP. When I'll read it as John's voice. When I saw back row attacks from Andy Jackson, it seemed like she could easily be an opposite or an outside hitter. Why is middle blocker the best position for her?
Ooh, that's a good question. Honestly, I think the reason that you would want her to be a middle, or why she's really good in the middle, is I don't think there's a ton of depth behind her, where you can spare a middle blocker. Also, if you're opposite, that takes away one of her strengths of running the slide in those 5-1 rotations when the setter's in the front row. She is maybe one of the best couple slide hitters in the country, where you run around, the setter runs behind the setter out to the right pin and takes a swing. If Andy Jackson moved to opposite, to me, that would indicate that Nebraska is going to play a 6-2, because you get to maximize Jackson in the front row, and your slide loss is mitigated. But she's a really good blocker. She's really quick laterally. She has all these things that I think you want a middle blocker to be. And Nebraska is going to be able to find an answer on the outside, on the right, that I would just leave her where she is.
Yeah. And I think you want a natural comparison to this. The person that maybe is Andy Jackson's most compared to is Lauren Stivrins. And look what Lauren Stivrins did this year for Love Omaha. Is she played some opposite. I mean, the footwork's a little bit different. The blocking's a little bit different because you're on the pin as opposed to closing that. So it is, I mean, if you are an uber athletic middle, that transition is possible. But I think given Nebraska's personnel, it makes a lot more sense just to stay in the middle. And also, I think the other question with that is, I mean, Nebraska does utilize some back row specialists too. Opposites do play a lot more 6 rotations too. We haven't had a lot of chance to see what Andy Jackson's passing skills are like. So that may be kind of a factor. If they're not at the level you want them to be, if you play her in middle, they get to sub out for the libero.
I want to see Andy Jackson attacking more in front of the setter, which she would not be able to do if she was an opposite. Whether it's like quick B sets or running gap routes or doing that front slide like we saw her do against South Dakota State. I mean, the school record for hitting percentage is, I think, 473. It's somewhere north of 470 that Tracy Stalls had. I'm not saying that she could break that, but I think Andy Jackson could hit 450 this year, and I don't think she would do that from the right side. And I'm not sure who then takes her spot along with Rebecca Alec in the middle if she were to move. So I think you got a first team All-American middle blocker, and you don't screw with it, and you just leave her there unless there's some huge roster need that I'm not currently aware of.
Yep. I agree too. Here's another one from John SP.
I hope it's John SP and not John's P, because that's the other way I guess we could be pronouncing it.
John's P. I think for purposes, we'll call it John SP. Given Flynn's success at attacking a 2, can Nebraska run a 6-2, a 2-setter system? What would be the pros, cons of that?
Yeah, we've gotten this question a lot, actually, whether it's on social media or in the I-80 Club Discord. I feel like I answer the first question first. Lincoln, do you want to take the 6-2 question first?
Sure. Yeah. I think that Nebraska could run a 6-2. The other part of the 6-2 is that you also need to have 2 opposites, because the part of that 6-2 is when the setter's always in the back row. When they get to the front row, you sub in an opposite for them, and then the other setter comes in for the opposite who is that. So you run 6 hitters, 2 setters is why we call it a 6-2. I mean, I think it's possible. We don't know. Again, I think it's more possible after seeing both Flynn and Ryan Hunter play. But the one thing that doesn't work out in Nebraska's favor, the other position where they are really strong, is defensive specialists. And I think by utilizing a 6-2, you take away a lot of those back row substitution, because your setter's always in the back row as well too. While Bergen Riley proved last year that she's an elite, or she's a very good defender in the back row. We didn't get a lot of chance to see what Campbell Flynn's passing prowess is, or what her defense is like too. So it does put a lot more pressure on the libero to take some of those second ball touches, because the setter is a lot more vulnerable to taking the first ball touches if they're playing the back row.
Exactly. And I think, there's another big reason why I don't think the 6-2 is right for Nebraska, because you take away one of Flynn's real strengths, which is attacking in the front row. Because in a 6-2, your setter always plays back row and is not eligible to attack in the front row in the way that Campbell Flynn showed that she did against Kansas and South Dakota State, where she gets to jump up above the net, be deceptive, and throw down that left-handed shot. Like you can't do that if you're only setting from the back row. And yeah, like Bergen Riley is a pretty good passer in the back row. We don't know about Campbell Flynn, and we don't know that Nebraska's really got the opposites to pull it off. You know, that puts a lot of pressure, I think, then on Nebraska's pin hitters to be passers in the back row. So for all those reasons, I don't think a 6-2 is necessarily the right move for Nebraska. I think the best case scenario is like one of those setters just wins the job, or you run a 5-1 knowing you've got two capable setters who can step in at any time. We have sort of toyed around with the idea, brought it up on the Discord. Nebraska could run a 5-2, which is where the setters, instead of switching out for opposites, just switch out for each other. And that does save you a couple substitutions a set. But in a 5-2, the setters sub for each other, but it would be like Campbell Flynn would be your front row setter and set those 3 rotations, which allows her to still attack in the front row. And then when it's time for her to rotate to the back row, Riley could come in and be the back row setter in those 3 rotations and still be able to, ball handle in the back row and have 4 attackers with her in every one of her rotations. So that's interesting. I think maybe the bigger picture that I worry about is one of your weaknesses or risks when you run a 6-2 is you have to get hitters used to hitting balls from 2 different setters, and just the consistency might not be developed in the way that you want. So I'm always a fan of a 5-1 when you can do it, and I think Nebraska is going to be able to do that this fall.
And again, the last 6-2, a 2-setter offense to win a national title was 2003 USC. So it's been a while. There's been
a couple that have come close, and
yes.
that were certainly good enough to win titles. Penn State in 2017 probably should have won the national title, and they ran a 2-setter offense. Although, like, the irony of it is that they lost their match point when their opposite and setter tripped over each other. That transition is risky. And then I think did Pitt run a 6-2 a couple of years that they went to the
Louisville's run a 6-2. So
So it can be done. There's no like curse of a 6-2. It just hasn't happened yet.
Hey, we'll got one more question. This is from reading this off my phone. It's from reader Lincoln Arneal. Jeff, where would you like to see Nebraska take its volleyball roadshow in the future?
This has also been bouncing around the internet. I think it's been long enough that they've been out to Western Nebraska that I would love to see it go out to Scotts Bluff again, or, if not Scotts Bluff, go to North Platte even. Scotts Bluff has a really strong volleyball program at Western Nebraska Community College. They've won some national championships out there. You could try to line up a match against Colorado State or Wyoming, and really make it a love letter to Western Nebraska. What about you?
I think they've done a good job of hitting all different parts of the states. I think this was your answer in the Discord, and I was thinking it too. Southeast Nebraska too, like doing something in Fall City, Auburn. Nebraska's shown that they're not afraid to go to a high school environment too, and those are some bigger, C1, B schools down there. The other one that I liked, but is going up to like the Sioux City area too. The problem is the big arena is over in Iowa, which kind of loses some of its luster by crossing the river too. But like a Sioux City match would be fun.
If we're sort of untangling ourselves from the need to have this in Nebraska and have it be the small town showcase, there are so many cool things they could do in the Midwest. Really put together like a multi-team tournament. You could have something in Des Moines or Sioux City or Kansas City, or what John Cook wanted to go to Vegas and have like a spring invite in Vegas a couple years ago, and the NCAA said no.
Or follow the Nebraska men's basketball has played a couple matches up on the Sanford Pentagon, which the hometown of Bergen Riley. They play matches up there too. That is a great environment for sports too.
That arena seats like 3,000? It's not very big, right?
I need to look this up.
I thought the Pentagon, as beautiful as it is pretty small, and maybe if your goal is to let more people see it, you want to look in a bigger arena.
3,200.
There's so many things that they could do, and I don't know. It's up to Danny Busboom Kelly ultimately if she wants to continue the process of taking the show on the road within Nebraska, because it is a lift, right? Like those the high school arenas that they've been playing in lately, you've got to cram in extra chairs and you got to find a hotel to stay at, and it's not as turnkey as when you just go to a big arena or a college that has all these facilities. So I think it's really cool. I hope they keep doing it. I could see the day come when they decide to stop doing it, though.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, it's always a fun experience. I enjoyed my time out in Ord, and I picked myself up a Libero lager that I will let the others enjoy too. But I support my hashtag Justice for Liberos.
That's right. Hey, moving to rotation 5, which is our post-spring way too early predictions for the Final Four. And maybe this got a little bit easier this morning when Kennedy Martin made her decision that she's going to be a Penn State Nittany Lion this fall. But Tony Hayek asked this question from the I-80 Club Discord. Thanks for being a Volleyball State subscriber, Tony. Which team do you think looked the most complete in the spring? Which I think dovetails nicely into us talking about our way too early Final Four picks.
I'll be honest, I did not get a chance to watch a lot of other spring matches. One, because of lack of availability.
Because you can't.
Yeah. I think I saw numbers like Nebraska had 225,000 people watch the Big Ten match, the matchup on the Big Ten Network. And they showed some other ones that were, I don't know if they're in 5 digits audience.
Wisconsin played one, I think, on BTN.
Yeah.
And who else? Did Penn State play Pitt, but that wasn't on TV, I don't think.
No. Yeah. It was, it's hard to watch spring because, again, teams are playing, they're playing in random locations. A lot of other people go to high schools, but like it's a production to get TV cameras into some of these venues. And a lot of them, they just are scrimmages where they're trying things out that aren't conducive to watching it. So I didn't get a chance to watch. I thought Nebraska looked very complete as the easy cop-out answer. So Jeff and I turned this question to who's our Final Four potential. I think I answered this on a radio show on a couple weeks ago. It's changed slightly, but I think Nebraska is still going to be the odds-on favorite. Just what they returned the most All-Americans out of anyone. They are veteran. They have the leadership, even with a coaching change. I think they're going to be really good. Kentucky, we talked about earlier with both Hudson and DeLay. They have a setter question, but they have a lot of talent and firepower. Penn State now, I think, enters the picture, but with Kennedy Martin, they did quite well in the in the portal. And I think Izzy Stark has shown that she's one of the best setters in the country. And I think Texas as well, too. They got Tori Stafford from Pitt, and they return a lot. And also, they don't have to deal with the conundrum of having 2 starting caliber setters. They've finally answered that setter question that plagued them, I thought, a lot last year.
So just for everyone's clarification, Avery Carlson left, transferred to SMU. So they're going to go with Ella Swindle, who will be a junior this year and set them to the national title 2 years ago against Nebraska when she was a true freshman. My way too early Final Four picks, I'm going to stick with Nebraska to make it for, what would this be, the 4th time in 5 years?
Yep.
4th time in 5 years for Nebraska. They've got a lot of pieces back, and those newcomers are going to be really, really good. I'm also going to go with Penn State. You know, Katie Schumacher-Colley trying to go back-to-back, even though she's got a retooled team a little bit. Izzy Stark was so impressive as a true freshman setter last year. It's such a luxury when you've got a great setter. It can kind of make everything else work. And so I think Penn State's going to go back to the Final Four. I'm with you on Texas. I think, you know, once again, Texas just has too much talent to screw it up, although they have done it before. But I think Texas is going to be really good. And then my 4th team is going to be the Pittsburgh Panthers, who Nebraska is going to see in the first opening match this year. Pitt's been to the Final Four, 4 years in a row now? And so I'm looking for them to make it number 5. I think Olivia Babcock's going to be on a mission after Tori Stafford left. That's not the only replacement that Pitt's got to find. Their setter, Rachel Fairbanks, graduated last year. But Dan Fisher's a really good coach, and he's got maybe the best player in the country, the defending national player of the year. And to me, that's a recipe for making it to the Final Four.
And they had some really good young middle blockers led by Bree Kelly. I think she was one of the leaders in hitting percentage too. So they got lots of depth as well too.
Near the end of last year, we joked on the show just about how dominant Pittsburgh was statistically. Like they led the nation in hitting percentage and opponent hitting percentage, which does not happen very often. There was a 250 point difference, I think, between their hitting percentage and their opponent hitting percentage. So don't take your eye off Pitt. They're going to be really good.
Yeah, there's a lot of a couple other potential caliber. I think Wisconsin's kind of on that next tier. We'll see how they do with that, but who they get to fill that. But I agree. Those are kind of the 6 teams that we talked about including Pitt and Wisconsin right
Mhm.
next to
And
out,
there will probably be a dark horse that, like, comes out of nowhere, kinda
like
like
SMU did last year.
yeah,
Yeah.
SMU last year or Arizona State last year. We're kinda writing off Stanford, it sounds like, but Stanford's always good. And, one of these years, one of the LA schools is gonna figure it out, whether it's USC or UCLA. Like, they're gonna have too many good players to not put together a run. So there will probably be at least one Final Four team that is not even on our radar right now.
I hope there is. If it's this predictable, it's going to make. I want some more drama, some more excitement. So that's the Final Four. Let's go to some more championships. Another Final Four this weekend. PVF has their Final Four. They will be playing just outside Vegas, in Henderson, I think is what it is. But the Final Four teams, we have number 1 seed Omaha, which clinched the regular season title. The Supernovas will take on the new first-year debutante Indy Ignite. That'll be the first match on Friday night. And the second match will be the Atlanta Vibe versus the Orlando Valkyrie. Both matches will be on CBS Sports Network. Jeff, what we asked
Yeah.
Sarah this question earlier. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think the thing that sticks out to me about Omaha is just how balanced that they can be, and you saw that on display last week where they clinched the top seed by winning at Atlanta and ending Atlanta's 13-match winning streak. Atlanta played all their regular starters, had a consistent lineup. Omaha played like everyone. Like everyone in the uniform ended up playing, and everyone really contributed. So Omaha can run out there. Ali Batenhorst, who came off the bench and hit 481 against Atlanta last weekend, or they can have Reagan Cooper be the other left side, along with Brooke Nuneviller, who's always going to play and is maybe having the best all around season in the PVF this year. At opposite, they could go with Emily Londot, or if she's struggling, they can go with Kelsey Payne, and both of whom have played a lot this year. So I think Omaha can really throw a lot of things at you. Now, one of the things I think is interesting is that Omaha and Indy haven't played since late March, I believe. They played their 4 matches against each other relatively early in the season. Omaha went 3-1 against Indy in the regular season, but won the first 3 matches. The 4th match, Indy swept them in Omaha. And so, Indy's going to come into this match confident. We talked with Sarah about Sydney Hilly being trying to get revenge on her old team. She thinks that Indy is going to knock off Omaha on Friday, and I could see it happening. But even if they'd lost on Friday, Omaha still had a really, really successful season in year 2.
Yeah, March 22nd was the last time they played. So it's been, more than a month. And I remember talking to the Omaha players after that match too, because Azani Teeler went off to them, that they really were disheartened with their effort to put up a block and try to slow her down. So I don't expect that they will allow that to happen a second time. And I think the other question, you mentioned about all the depth that Omaha has hitting wise too. They also have depth at setter and libero. Allison Witten's kind of taken over for Camila Gomez at libero, and Camila Gomez was an all-star, so she's not a slouch at all too. And then both Natalia Valentin Anderson, who was named second team all league. Don't get me started on that process. And Mac Pedraza, I think they've kind of been interchanged a little bit too. And they present different looks. Pedraza's a lot taller setter, but Valentin Anderson is quicker, athletic, and can do a lot of different things, chase the ball down a little bit more. So I think, to me, we talk about Brooke Nuneviller as really the heart and soul of this team, but the coaching job that Laura Bird-Kuhn has done has been really impressive of pulling the right strings, knowing what substitutions to make. And they've played 4 middle blockers as well too. So it was not a surprise that everyone played last week in Atlanta. It's that they have that team depth where they go 1 through 14 and have the options.
Hey, remember when we interviewed Allison Witten on a boat last season on the show? We're talking about firsts on the show with Sarah Pavan. Allison Witten was one of the first players we ever interviewed while floating in a lake, which was
Caitlin Horde was on there too. So
and Caitlin Horde. So yeah, Witten's gotten a lot more playing time lately, and she's been doing really well. Do you imagine that they're going to go with Nati at setter, or is Mac going to get a look there?
I think they typically do that too. Nadi's she started a lot more. Mac's been kind of that change of pace. She really had her best match this year. I think, was it when they reverse swept at Indy. She came in and kind of sparked that. But I think that I wouldn't be surprised if they go with their regular lineup of Nunaviller, Cooper, Payne. Middle blocker may be a little more questionable. I mean, Caffey and Horde have been the regulars, but Onabanjo and
Awoliye?
Oh boy, yeah.
They played a lot versus Atlanta.
Yeah, she started, but I don't know that, but I think they'll go with Valentine Anderson at setter.
The other semifinal matchup on Friday night, also on CBS Sports Network, is going to be really fun. I think Orlando and Atlanta are really good. Both of these teams are two of the best offensive teams in the PVF. It's a matchup of the league's two leaders in kills. Orlando's Brittany Abercrombie, who's gone off against Omaha a couple times. She's the only player in the PVF that's averaging over 4 kills a set. And then Atlanta's got Leah Edmond, who's second at averaging 3.6 kills a set. And we mentioned Azani Teeler. Teeler plays for Orlando, right? Or is it Atlanta? Apologies. This makes me sound like a terrible volleyball podcast host. But Azani Teeler is really good. I think you're going to see teams going Orlando and Atlanta going swing for swing in that one. The Vibe and the Valkyries. That was one that Sarah said that split her and Adam's opinion, where I think Sarah thinks that Atlanta's going to win and Adam thinks that Orlando is going to win. We will see who is right late Friday night, and then what the championship match is on Sunday.
Yeah. Teeler plays for Indy.
Okay. So
she played for Orlando last year. Sorry. You're right.
That is why I'm thinking of that. I knew that she was on a different team last year.
Yeah. So okay. I think it'll be fun too. Yeah. It'll be turned to CBS Sports Network or Omaha's. We haven't mentioned this yet. We mentioned it passing, but Omaha's looking for their second consecutive league championship too. And they're playing for $1 million. So there'll be plenty more.
Absolutely. Well, hey, that is the show today. Thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks very much to Sarah Pavan for coming and being on the show. You can subscribe to this show for free in all the regular ways. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify, wherever you found us. Now we're on YouTube. Like, you get to look at our shiny heads. But if you want to support the show even more, help us do more great stuff and get great bonus content, you can check out the I-80 Club page on Patreon. It's patreon.com/I-80 Club, just $5 a month. Gets you access to Volleyball Late, our post-match show, our newsletters, the I-80 Club Discord, where we take your questions. And then starting this fall, Lincoln, on Sunday nights, we're going to be recording the show live. Only our subscribers will have access to the show live and be able to interact with us during the show. Everyone else will get the show a day or so later.
Yeah. Oh, it was such a good deal for $5 a month. It's a good deal. So you can interact with us now. We'll be probably live tweeting some of the matches this weekend. Hopefully I'm running in a race in Iowa, a relay race in Iowa. So, but I'll make time for volleyball because volleyball never ends. So follow us on social media at Volleyball Pod on Twitter and Blue Sky. Email us any questions at volleyballstate@gmail.com. They can follow you, Jeff, at
by Jeff Sheldon on social media.
Yep. And I am Lincoln_VB, Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky, wherever we put out the content. You enjoy listening to it, hopefully. So thank you for listening to this. If you made it all the way to the end, hardcore fan, we appreciate you. And thank you for living in the Volleyball State.